This game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is the perfect opportunity for Spencer Rattler to bounce back.
While the Buccaneers need a big divisional win before they head into the bye week.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome into this Crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Bucs and Locked On Saints. We are your host, James Yarko from Locked On Bucs, myself, Ross Jackson, over at Locked On Saints. We thank you very much for being here with us today on this Crossover Thursday episode. We're going to tell you why this matchup is all about the quarterbacks. We'll dive into the massive battle in the trenches, some of the health concerns that both of these teams are looking to overcome this weekend, which are massive as well. And then we're going to kick everything off, taking a look at what each of these teams has going on. Spencer Rattler looking for a bounce back, and of course, those Buccaneers looking to manage some major injuries. We got all that and more coming up for you on this Crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Bucs and Locked On Saints. We thank you very much for making us your first listen and being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's Crossover Thursday is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. James, glad to be here with you, buddy. But those Tampa Bay Buccaneers kind of going through it right now. The biggest story around them feels very much like it has to do with the players that might not be on the field.
Yeah, it's kind of been the running theme for the Buccaneers this season. And yeah, the biggest story is, can they overcome such significant injuries? Of course, the biggest one is Mike Evans, lost for most, if not all, of the regular season. We're still awaiting word, as you and I are sitting down to do this, on the results of Hassan Reddick's MRIs on both his knee and his ankle. Early word, early speculation is he's going to miss multiple weeks. Luckily, one of those would be the bye week. But you add those to Chris Godwin, Bucky Irving, Luke Gedeke, whose absence might have been the most glaring in that Monday night loss to Detroit. You start to ask, how much more can the Bucs take? Numerous players in and out of the lineup, key players on injured reserve. The bye week comes at a great time so they can start to get some of these guys back. But can they continue to hold up for so long when you're losing not just starters, but integral parts of your team to these injuries?
Yeah, I mean, it's massive, right? Like, Baker Mayfield's been playing at an MVP level easily all season. And then all of a sudden, you have all these injuries. So to players that he would try to throw the ball to guys that are trying to make sure that he can throw the football, and that those things compound. He was under pressure over 50% of the game last week on Monday night up against the Detroit Lions. That's not how you want Baker Mayfield playing the game, I imagine.
No, not at all. I mean, it was the worst performance by an offensive line in a single game this season. So yeah, I mean,
and that's a beat up offensive line, by the way. That's not the intended offensive line. That is a beat up offensive line.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you have two guys on the right side that are not supposed to be there. Cody Mauch out for the season. Luke Gedeke still working his way back. So, that was not the game plan. And Baker's done a lot with a little. He didn't have Mike for a couple of games. He only had Godwin for 2. They haven't had McMillan all season. Bucky's been out since he got injured against the Philadelphia Eagles. So they've still managed to get the job done. But if Baker doesn't have time to throw, then that Monday night is what happens when he is just constantly under duress.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the Saints are going to be looking to maybe be on the right side of the conversation when it comes to the injury advantage when it comes to some, but obviously they're dealing with some big injuries as well. And we'll highlight those here in just a little bit. But I want to start off, I want to take a look at like the biggest story around the Saints, James, which is absolutely centered around the quarterback position and the head coach, Kellen Moore and Spencer Rattler, both looking for a bounce back after career low games going up against the Chicago Bears last week. 3 interceptions for Spencer Rattler. His previous career high was 2 interceptions in one of the Buccaneers games last year. And then, of course, also had a fumble on the second play of the game that led to a turnover. So responsible for 4 turnovers, but also showed some of the things that he does incredibly well, extending plays, picking up yardage with his legs, getting finally a connection going with wide receiver Chris Olave, finding him in the end zone twice. Chris Olave's first career 2-touchdown game or multi-touchdown game, which feels like that should have happened a long time ago. And so really what you're looking for in this one as a Saints fan, James, is can Spencer Rattler bounce back after what was a career low performance? We've seen Spencer Rattler struggle in bad situations in the past, particularly during his rookie year, but seeing him against the Chicago Bears have a rough game like he did, all eyes are now back on him to see if he'll be able to bounce back against the Bucs.
Yeah, and it seems like he's kind of gradually been building towards something positive this season, right? I mean, the Saints have been in all but one of these games, by and large. You know, the blowout to the Seahawks,
right?
Yeah, you kind of throw that game away the way the Bucs are throwing that Lions game away. But you know, he's performing at a much better, you know, clip than I think a lot of outsiders would have expected from him. So that Bears game, to me, kind of seems like the outlier. I would expect a much better performance against the Bucs than he had against the Bears, even though the Bucs defense outside of Kalijah Kancey and Hassan Reddick is mostly healthy now. They got their secondary back. So I'll be interested to see how Rattler responds to that kind of adversity and if he's going to be, you know, right there with Baker in a bounce back week.
Yeah, I'll look, both of Spencer Rattler's best passing yardage games came against the Bucs last season during his rookie year. So he probably has a little bit of confidence going in. His completion percentage, his quarterback rating, his touchdown to interception ratio in those games, not as positive. But the passing yardage maybe gives him a little bit of confidence knowing that, hey, I've found a way to move the ball against these guys before and against Todd Bowles before. It might maybe give him a little bit more of a boost going into this matchup. But it's sort of what we expected last week going up against, you know, former New Orleans Saints head coach Dennis Allen and all the, you know, emotion that tied into that. And unfortunately, it just didn't necessarily get there. So I think Spencer Rattler has a chance, but maybe even more importantly, kind of a responsibility to himself to bounce back here up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because if he can do that, it might keep some of that Tyler Shuck talk at bay. Did you have an expectation of which quarterback you might see early on in the season looking at this one in week 8?
I always kind of expected it to be Rattler unless things really went off the rails in the first couple weeks, a la Russell Wilson to Jackson Dart, that kind of situation.
Be careful now. Russell will tweet about you if he sees you talking stuff. Oh, excuse me, Sierra's husband. Sierra's husband will tweet about you if he sees you talking stuff.
I didn't say anything negative about him. I just, you know, it may change. Hey, I'm on Russ's side. Your listeners and viewers know anytime someone's taking a swipe at Sean Payton, I am here for it.
Hey, look, I think Sean Payton was right in that one. I haven't seen it in Russell Wilson in quite some time, but that might just be me. All right, coming up next, we're going to dive into more on this matchup. Let's take a look at the matchups that will make this game and could potentially be the difference in it, starting with a big-time battle on the interior that I'm sure not a lot of Saints fans are looking forward to. We'll get to that next as we continue on with this crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Bucs, Locked On Saints here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Bucs and Locked On Saints is brought to you by friends over at Prize Picks, the easiest and most fun way to play daily fantasy sports. We're all looking for ways to get closer to that NFL action that is without getting hit, and that is where Prize Picks comes in. All you have to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 players, and if you get those right in terms of those Prize Picks stat projections, you could be walking away with real cash. We make decisions every day, but getting those decisions right over on Prize Picks can get you paid. It's Prize Picks where it's good to be right. It's super easy to get involved. They even give you some max discounts. Back on October 21st, there was one for Steph Curry where all he needed to do was score a point to get you a win on your board. That gives you one of those 2 to 6 wins, and bang, you can be walking away with some big time earnings over at Prize Picks today. So go and check them out. Download the Prize Picks app and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Today's episode also brought to you by friends over at Game Time. Talk about getting closer to the NFL action. Well, with the NFL season rolling along, you know that there's no better place to be than rooting on your favorite team in the stands, feeling all that atmosphere, enjoying it with friends and family as well. But we know that sometimes it can be tricky to get those tickets, especially last minute. You talk about long queues, login screens, prices jumping at checkout. It can be very frustrating. That's why I exclusively use Game Time when it comes to buying my tickets, because the price you see is the price you get. Plus, you also have 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and always at the best price over at Game Time. That's the Game Time guarantee. I pulled up Game Time in just a couple of taps. I saw some amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite NFL games for as low as $100 and sometimes even lower. Download the Game Time app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. All right, everybody, continuing on with this crossover Thursday edition, Locked On Bucs and Locked On Saints. We thank you very much for being here with us. Don't forget to like and subscribe, follow, and share so you can keep up with everything going on around your Tampa Bay Buccaneers and New Orleans Saints. And, of course, James and I will be back with another episode on Friday, finishing up, wrapping up the week, and getting you ready for this big-time matchup. A non-noon game for the New Orleans Saints. A little bit of an oddity for us here in New Orleans this season. So this will be a fun one to watch. James, the matchup that stands out to you as being the biggest and most important matchup is where?
On the defensive side, it's going to be Vita Vea against whoever Erik McCoy's backup is. We kind of assume it's going to be Luke Fortner, but regardless of who it is, Vea has to be the guy that gets things going for the Bucs pass rush. No one on this defense is really putting up eye-popping numbers for the Bucs, but the pressures overall have been fantastic. Yaya Diaby's on a little bit of a mini heater over the last couple of weeks, but it all starts in the middle. And Vea is the catalyst there, especially with Kalijah Cansey out. But rookie Elijah Roberts has gotten better each and every week. He had his name called a couple of times against the Lions. So Vea doing his part to collapse the interior of the pocket has created opportunities for these edge guys by forcing a quarterback to go where he doesn't want to go, and that's typically right into a Bucs defender. So the New Orleans Saints are 25th in pressures allowed per dropback and 26th in average time to throw. Losing McCoy right before facing Vita Vea is the perfect recipe for the Bucs to get the pass rush going.
Yeah, that's going to be a major, major piece in this matchup. There's no doubt about that. You mentioned Luke Fortner. I think you're right. I think we're both in the same place there. We think it's going to be Luke Fortner. The Saints have tended to kind of lean on the veteran experience when needed. But during the season so far, when they've had some injuries at starters, they've gone to rookies. We see rookie safety Jonas Sanker stepping in for Julian Blackmon, even though there were other veteran options, Jordan Howden, Terrell Burgess there. There was, of course, Quincy Riley, who has stepped in place of Isaac Yiadom as well. So we're not going to be surprised if it is rookie Torres Ellie-Simpkins, but I'm going to tell you this, in either case, your point stands, man. Like, this is going to be a big-time matchup in this game. And in any case, either you're going up against an undrafted free agent rookie, a guy that's moving from right guard to center in Cesar Ruiz, which is also an option, or you're going up against Luke Fortner, who sure has a couple of years under his belt with over 1,000 snaps played at center, but hasn't done that or had held that kind of workload for the past couple of years. And so, yeah, that one kind of scares me a little bit too, if I'm looking at that from the Saints' perspective, right? And I think that really the Saints' offensive line versus that Tampa Bay Buccaneers defensive line is going to be kind of the matchup to watch for me. We just talked about the need for Spencer Rattler and the bounce back effectively that he's looking for and I think would like to show. And I think that the loss of Erik McCoy makes not only the defensive tackle's job a little bit easier, but it might make the defensive front's job a little bit easier because Erik McCoy is an elite identifier pre-snap, before the snap and before the play gets underway. And so identifying pressures and understanding where things are coming from, that has been a big part of Erik McCoy's responsibility, along with Spencer Rattler and others. And so now you're going to have, I assume, multiple players start to have to chime in on those identification setups before the snap. And I think that could potentially cause the Saints offensive line and thus Spencer Rattler some problems.
Yeah, the game is won and lost in the trenches, right? And the Bucs have a huge advantage there because of that loss. And I don't think a lot of people fully appreciate everything that McCoy does for this offense. So it's such a massive, not just, talent, but leader along that front line for the Saints in this divisional matchup.
Yeah, leadership's big right now too, because the Saints are in the midst of what is a developmental year. They're 1-6. You want to try to keep your locker room together. You want to try to keep spirits high. You want to keep guys performing on the field. Erik McCoy is the kind of guy that brings that level of accountability. So James and I both starting off in the trenches here for the Saints offense and the Bucs defense. James, what are you looking for when it comes to that Bucs offense, which I know is down some of its key names?
Yeah, I'm looking at the Bucs receivers against the Saints secondary. So while the Bucs do need to establish the run like they did in the last game these two teams had in New Orleans when the Bucs rushed for 277 yards, Baker himself needs a big day to erase the memory of what happened Monday night. So the Saints pass defense hasn't been as bad as Bucs fans might think. But the way you can really attack them is by getting the ball to your playmakers quickly and then let them get the yards after catch. The Saints are 23rd in the NFL in yards allowed after catch per reception and 21st in yards per reception allowed. The Bucs, even without Evans, Godwin, and McMillan, most of the season, they're third in the NFL in yards after catch, 12th in yards per reception. So Emeka Egbuka looked great on Monday night. He just didn't have the opportunity to catch most of the targets that were thrown his way. And I would guess that Kool-Aid McKinstry is going to be on him most of the game. But Emeka Egbuka has not gone against a corner that's been able to stop him all season long. And then add to that, Tez Johnson is starting to emerge back-to-back weeks with a touchdown. He has 12 targets over his last 2 weeks. He had 7 in his previous 4 games combined. So this is where the Bucs are really going to be able to separate themselves in this game, is letting their playmakers make the plays. You don't have to have long developing routes. Just get it into their hands and then watch them take off.
And one of my favorite stories in the NFL season so far is Tez Johnson thinking the MVP chants were for him in the end zone. That's one of my favorite stories. It's so wholesome. It's so good. It's such a great moment. And then he's like, that's for Baker. Okay. All right. That's one of my favorite stories of the year so far.
Chris Godwin's reaction to Shepard telling him that story is absolutely classic. I have never seen a human being laugh that hard over anything in my life. It so really was. It was such a rookie moment, but that's why we love Tez.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. Like that just shows you that dude's personality. Like he is all positivity all the time. He was super fun to scout and everything too. Like when he was coming into the draft and stuff. So he's been a lot of fun to watch. Yeah, look, I think for the Saints, they've got a young secondary right now, right? A second-year starter on the outside at Kool-Aid McKinstry, potentially still a rookie starter in Quincy Riley, depending on Isaac Adams' health or what decision the Saints make there. Quincy Riley out of Louisville, 5th-round pick this past year, just got his first interception last week against Chicago. And then you still have young players, another rookie at safety in Jonas Sanker. Guy still on his rookie contract, and Alontae Taylor in the slot, who sometimes plays on the outside in base packages. So I'm with you on that. I think that's going to be a big-time matchup. But the guy that's going to help them in all of that is going to be Chase Young. Chase Young has been back for 2 games so far, James, and he is already second on this team in quick pressures generated with 5 over the last 2 games against some pretty good offensive line play. And he's also leading the team in pressure percentage at 24.2%. The next defensive lineman after him is Chris Rumph III at 12.7%. It is a big time drop off. And so Chase Young has got to do all the things necessary to get Baker Mayfield under a little bit of pressure so that maybe some of those passes to Emeka Egbuka, some of those passes to Tez Johnson are a little bit more uncatchable and give those Saints attacking zone coverage players on the secondary side some opportunities to go and try to make some plays on the football. You're right. The Saints passing defense is not as bad as it seems, but when they give up chunk yardage, they give up chunk yardage, and that becomes a big part of the story. Missed tackles, things like that have been an issue for them as well. And so to me, the upfront nature of what we discussed in the trenches for the Saints offense and the Bucs defense translates a bit for the Saints defense in order to make things a little bit easier on their young secondary against some really good high flying potential on that Bucs offense.
Yeah. And the blueprint was just laid out for Chase Young, a couple of days ago against the Lions. And if he can generate that kind of pressure, and the Bucs have to shift their focus there, and now someone else can step up and continue to keep that pressure on Baker. We saw what happens. Those passes are high. He's missing open guys. He's throwing bad footballs. So that's going to be crucial, especially if Chase Young is going up against Charlie Heck or the right side of that line. They gave him some help against Aiden Hutchinson, but that help only holds up for so long. And it's going to be imperative that they figure out a way to slow down Chase Young a heck of a lot better than they slowed down the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, like the pun there with heck and heck. That was really good. Usually he's rushing off of the left side. I should have said this. Sorry. Usually he's rushing off of the offensive left side. So Tristan Wirfs versus Chase Young, pretty solid matchup there. But we'll see if they end up moving him around just to try to take advantage of what's going on with that Bucs right side.
I think that's something that we definitely could see in this game.
Yeah, 100%. All right, coming up next, we're going to get to what it is that each of these teams needs to do to get a win. And surprise, surprise, it's all about the quarterbacks. We got that coming up for you next here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's Locked On Bucs and Locked On Saints crossover is brought to you by our friends over at Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. They deliver confidence in every ride with more IIHS top safety pick plus awards than anyone else as of August of 2025. From footwork to breathwork, you know all of the athletes that you know and love. They sweat all the details, and Mazda brings the same level of intention to the way that they craft their vehicles on every single model, everything from those metallic accents down to the available Napa leather upholstery as well. You're going to be able to see it all in their craftsmanship. And of course, the smooth handling and intuitive controls that help make everyday drives feel like everything but everyday drives. You're going to get exactly what you're looking for with your new Mazda. So just like the players that you know and love, Mazda sweats every single detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Let's get it, everybody. Wrapping up this crossover Thursday edition, Locked On Bucs and Locked On Saints, with what each of these teams needs to do to get a win. And surprise, surprise, the conversation at least starts around each of these quarterbacks. So, James, let's start off with you. Traveling here to New Orleans, what do the Tampa Bay Bucs need to do to get a win this weekend?
Well, offensively, you have to give Baker time. We have talked about the trenches this entire episode. That was one of the biggest reasons the Bucs lost to Detroit. That offensive line allowed 30 pressures on 50 pass attempts. That is the most by any offensive line in a single game this season. It started on the opening drive, and we know pressure is cumulative. So Baker started rushing passes, not getting his feet set. It led to him missing on throws that we have seen him make time and time again this season. If Baker gets his normal, I'm not asking for extended time, just give him his normal time to throw, which has been around 2 to 2.5 seconds on the season, he's going to be able to make plays down the field. He's going to be able to get the ball into the hands of Emeka Egbuka, Tez Johnson, Cam Johnson, Sterling Shepard, Rashad White out of the backfield, Otten with a huge emergence. They just cannot afford to have the right side of that offensive line, basically turn into turnstiles for Saints defenders to run free at their quarterback.
Yeah, it's going to be massive. I think pass rush on both sides of this equation are going to be very, very important going on throughout this game. And obviously the Saints would like to see that. They've been one of the worst teams when it comes to pressure percentage, but over the course of the past couple of weeks gotten a little bit better since they've gotten Chase Young back. So I'm sure that Brandon Staley and his defense would like to see a little bit more of that continued progress as they move forward. For the Saints, it comes down to two things for me. Spencer Rattler is probably going to have the best game of his career, have this big time bounce back game. I said this up against the San Francisco 49ers weeks ago, and I thought that Spencer Rattler did at that time have his best game of his career. It gave them, they were pretty close in terms of being able to win that one. But in this one, it's going to have to be undeniable. And it's not going to have to be something to where it's like, oh, if they would have completed that touchdown pass, then it would have been a strong game for them. They've got to get that done. They have to be able to go out there and make those plays. And so I think that that's going to be a big piece to it. And then the Saints defense needs to take the football away and then give that offense and Spencer Rattler some more possessions and some more opportunities with the ball in their hands. The Saints right now have 9 total takeaways on the season, James. 5 of them came in one game. And then there are just 4 other games with 1 takeaway each. Now, they've got at least 1 takeaway in most games this season, to their credit. However, that's not a sustainable, amount of takeaways that can make your defense a difference maker for you. So I think those 2 things will have to happen in order for the Saints to even sniff an opportunity to get a win here against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, or at least look good in the midst of a loss.
Yeah, and protecting the football is something that the Buccaneers have done really, really well this season. In their 2 losses, they have 2 turnovers in each of those games. So that is going to be a major key for the New Orleans Saints if they're going to try to get an upset win. Defensively for the Bucs, it's the inverse of what I said. Offensively, they have to take advantage of the loss of McCoy and really get in Rattler's face early and often, but it has to come from the natural pass rush. I'm not saying don't blitz at all. We know Todd Bowles is going to dial it up here and there, but Rattler has actually been decent against the blitz this season. He's got a higher completion percentage and a better touchdown to interception ratio against the blitz this year. That's why Vita Vea and Elijah Roberts and those guys up front are going to be so important. If they can get to Rattler without Bowles needing to send guys like Tyke Smith or Antoine Winfield Jr. or Levante David on blitzes, then that's when you're going to be able to force him into some mistakes and really be able to take control of this game.
Yeah, absolutely. Really good call out there on the pressure and the blitz rather, and how Spencer Rattler's done a good job kind of managing that. That is an example of his growth from his rookie season where he did not manage things like that very well, or was not able to manage things like that very well. Much better here in the 2025 season. All right, my prediction for this game is that the Bucs are going to come here to New Orleans and probably blow the Saints out. I have like a 31-16 kind of projection for this matchup. I don't think that this one's close. I don't know if the Saints end up leaving this game feeling any better about themselves after their performance in Chicago. I think that the loss of Erik McCoy is a massive, massive loss that can't be overstated, James, and I think we're going to see that on Sunday. What are you looking for in this matchup, at least when it comes to the Bucs, who I believe right now are 4.5-point favorites?
Yeah, I don't have a score prediction, but I do feel like this is a game where they are going to come out really, really angry and wanting to redeem themselves for a bad primetime performance. So I feel like this is one where the Bucs do cover. I think at the end of the day, with Ibuka, with Tez, with the offensive weapons they have, if Baker has the time, which I think he can in this one, they're going to be able to take advantage of that Saints secondary a little bit. And, I'm just saying this will be the fourth matchup between Emeka Ibuka and one of his Ohio State offensive teammates. Bucs are 3-0 in those games.
There you go. There you go. Lots of keys to watch in this one, in what should be a fun game. We'll see if either of these teams proves us wrong. We appreciate you very much for being here with us. Don't forget to come and check us out over at Locked On Bucs and Locked On Saints for more on Friday. And we'll see you then here on Locked On Bucs and Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.